Paul is suffering at the hands of the Jews. Paul is imprisoned by the Roman emperor. These were the common perceptions held by those who knew Paul while he was in prison at the time. However, Paul had a different perspective towards himself. He did not deny his suffering or conceal his imprisonment. Furthermore, he did not attribute the cause of his hardship to the Jews or the Roman emperor. He recognized that he was suffering and imprisoned by Jesus, and he wrote this in his letter to the Ephesian Church. Even before the Jews captured Paul in Jerusalem, he foresaw the suffering he would face. The Holy Spirit had revealed to him that there would be chains and tribulations wherever he went. And the prophet Agabus also warned him that the Jews would bind him in Jerusalem. Nevertheless, he did not hesitate to enter Jerusalem to fulfill God's providence upon him. He was able to do this because he regarded himself as an individual under Christ, appointed by God to fulfill his purpose. If Paul had not acknowledged God's providence that imprisoned him, he might have resented his life filled with suffering and employed human methods to break away from the situation. However, he recognized his suffering for the sake of God's work and rejoiced in the fact that his suffering brought about the progress of the gospel. While his life was deprived of the happiness that all humans could possess, he was grateful that many individuals benefited from it. What mattered most to him was that God's administration was being fulfilled through God's providence upon him. However, some individuals disregarded Paul, even though they owed him a debt of grace. They argued Paul was just doing his job that he should do, and the work was not originally intended for us. Why should we be grateful to him? They listened to God's administration through Paul, but were unaware of God's providence revealed to Paul that led him to preach it. In other words, despite acknowledging God's grace, they failed to recognize the relationship between God and Paul, who actually served them, and turned a blind eye to Paul's life filled with sacrifice for them. While we may not always be aware of it, our journey here, guided by grace, has been made possible by those who have selflessly served us according to God's will. They have been imprisoned in God's will and willingly sacrificed their lives, allowing us to have hope for tomorrow. Now is the time for each of us to embrace the providence entrusted by God. Whoever is a part of the church is a key player in God's providence. Let us joyfully obey the guidance of the Lord, who leads us individually. Let us serve the church and endure hardships. Let us become fully bound to the hands of the Lord, who fulfills the Father's will.